Yes, it is time for yet another Corvette video on the C8. Hi, my name is Eric, and I will be at the press launch, so go ahead and subscribe if you want to catch up on that. I'll be posting a video the same day, and I've also got a free Discord chat link down below. You can chat about cars all day long. Now, despite all the rumors, all the hype, everything that's been going on in the forums, we actually don't know all that much about the Corvette yet. We're going to look at what Chevrolet might be hiding, and we're also going to look at the possibility that the C8 Corvette might have a manual. I've got a theory on that. I've also been following the Toyota Supra, and as you may or may not know, it does not have a manual transmission at launch, and that has caused so much consternation in the community. There's so many people that are absolutely outraged by that. And the rumor has been with the Corvette, with the C8, that it is only going to have a DCT and there's going to be no manual as well. Yet, in the Corvette community, I'm not really sensing the same level of outrage. Now that could be because there are just a lot of automatics sold in the C8. According to Motor One magazine, back in January of 2018, they said that the stats showed that about 75% roughly of Corvettes were sold with automatics. Well, those are looking, of course, at the 2017 numbers, so here we are in 2019. I'm willing to bet that the percentage of automatics has crept up just a little bit. There's also a reason why the C8 is coming, and that is because sales of the C7 have been dropping like they do pretty much with every generation, but they are pretty much at the historical low level right now. If you want to get a C8 Corvette and you don't want to get gouged at a dealer, I definitely recommend you go to midenginecorvetteforum.com. By the way, this is not sponsored. I'm saying it because these guys have an awesome forum over there, and there's threads with dealers that are charging only MSRP for the car. Now, I obviously can't guarantee that you're going to be first in line, or I can't make any guarantees at all, but there definitely are dealers that will sell you the car without markup. Tell me down below, how important is a manual to you? Are you gonna get a manual with the C8? Is that super important if you can get one? Or are you gonna be cool with whatever kind of DCT that they have if that's the only option? My question is, where's the outrage? There doesn't seem to be that much outrage here compared to the Supra. And it's, I guess, just a different car culture. Wait, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling there's an answer coming in right now in the comments, even though I haven't published the video yet.
Wait, I have to do actual work like shift myself?
Yep, just another lazy millennial. Doesn't even want to shift. Autoblog.com just posted some spy photos of the C8 Corvette testing at the Chevy Proving Grounds. Autoblog is claiming that these are some of the most accurate spy photos we've seen to date. I actually don't agree with that. I think there's been plenty other pretty close-up spy photos. These are from a very, very long lens shot at a great distance, and just that fact alone doesn't make me think that these photos are any more or less revealing than what we've seen before, because what really matters, of course, is how much camouflage Chevy has been putting on this car. And believe me, it's a lot. At the press event in New York City, there's actually some pretty good photos, really, really close up of the car. Probably the best stuff that we've seen. And I've done some screen grabs and I've looked at all of the photos, and I want to take a look at this one of the door. You can see next to Mary Barra, here is the door, and there is a lot of panels on here. So it looks like there are two levels of panels on this thing. One, they could both be styrofoam. And what is, I think, the most revealing part of this is that underneath this winglet here is what looks to be sort of a metal piece that is perhaps screwed onto the door that is holding up these winglets. Clearly, this is fake. This is not something that's ever going to make it into production. We can see what looks like maybe some kind of button to open the door or a key or something like that, but this metal piece here looks like a piece of aluminum. It is holding up both of these two pieces. So, you know, here's sort of my take on it. I think that one of two things is true. This is my theory. We got this double layer of stuff on the door, and we have this piece that's propping it up. I think that either there is going to be no wing on the door whatsoever, or that both of these pieces are forming a little trapezoidal, whatever, a little box around what is going to be a very, very small wing. And here's my reasoning behind that. There's no way that this is going to make it into production, and one of the reasons is because of safety. If you look at this thing, there is a really, really sharp edge at it, and I could see this like gouging somebody, in the stomach, something like that, if this thing actually made it into production. It's huge, it's big, and it just looks completely fake to me. I've been looking at this thing for like a couple of hours, and there's just no way that this is any kind of representation of what the car is actually going to look like on the door piece. Let's look at another angle of the car. Here we've got the Chevrolet teaser video from a couple weeks back.
Is your seatbelt fastened? All right. Let's go.
Now, one thing I noticed that was really interesting is that throughout the beginning of this video, Chevrolet has dropped in all of the previous mid-engine prototypes of this car. Now, that's really interesting. There's always been a lot of speculation. Is this thing going to be mid-engine? I don't remember if it's been, definitively announced that it's going to be mid-engine at the press event, but clearly here in this teaser video, you can see all the prototypes. They're all mid-engine. There's like a 0% chance this is going to be front engine rear-wheel drive unless Chevy really has one over on us, and I think there's absolutely no chance of that. Now, if you look at this video here, I've done some screenshots from this teaser video, and you look at the rear here, just behind the door. On the track car, there's an extra vent, what looks like an extra vent. It could be tape, but I do think it's actually a vent because you can sort of see the outline on the rear fender of sort of a little triangular type thing there. So there is something going on there, which I don't think we've seen before in the spy photos. Again, I don't know if it's meant to be misleading or it's actually something functional. But if you compare it with the car in New York City, and I think most of the other prototypes that we've seen, it is different, it's new. I don't think we've seen it before. So there's clearly something going on around the top of this fender here and that whole rear intake vent thing. I'm very, very suspicious of the way it looks. So how big might this whole side vent, this whole side intake thing might be? Let's actually take a look at a couple of other cars that are mid-engines, much higher up in the price range, and see what sizes of intakes they've got going on. Here we've got the Ferrari F8 Tributo, which is the replacement for the 488 GTB. Heck of a lot more expensive than the C8 is going to be. Anyways, they've got a very, very big rear intake here, and it's sort of higher up on the fender in this case. Notice it doesn't really extend into the door. Here's another shot of it from the press release, and you can see that. So it's a reasonably big size. Let's take a look at McLaren. Looking at this McLaren 650S, you can see they've got a very large side intake on this car, obviously pulling a lot of air into the engine. This is one of the bigger ones out there. Here's the McLaren 570S. It's also got a very, very large intake, and it's basically mid-fender in this particular design. One more from McLaren. This is the 650S. The intake is huge. Let's look at the door. This was one of the only shots I could find of the door from behind, but you can see, looking at it, the rear of the fender basically extends way onto the door, but it's very different than what we saw in that New York City C8 stabathon event with that super sharp triangle that's just gonna like kill somebody over there. This is quite different. This is obviously safe, and this really integrates into the rear arch pretty seamlessly, pretty elegantly, and it goes into the door. Again, just to remind you, here's another shot of the New York City big triangle on the door from farther back. My theory from looking at all this, yes, it could have a pretty big intake on the side, but I think it's going to be nowhere near as big as what we're seeing with all this styrofoam, whatever all this camouflage padding kind of stuff is in the door. I think the top of the fender is completely fake too. I think that's probably not going to be the actual line. It's very boxy. And I think what we're going to have, my guess is that it's going to be a much smaller piece at the top of the door leading into the fender, or no piece at all. I'm not quite sure, but clearly we've got to get from the wheel well to the door, and we've got an angle there, so there's going to be some kind of intake, but I think it's going to be a lot smaller, probably a lot rounder than what we've seen, and I think it's just going to be a lot more elegant looking. Going back to mid-engine Corvette forum, Zora C2 did this yellow render of what looks to be pretty close to, you know, a take of all the spy shots that we've seen so far, with this big triangular stabbing piece on the side of the door. I don't think that's very accurate. It does look pretty good, but I think we're missing some of what I hope is going to be some of the elegance of the car. In my opinion, the C6 was perhaps a lot more conservative than the C7, but definitely was a little more of a classic style. The C7 has definitely got a lot more angles going on in there, and it's a lot more boy racer, and I like them both a lot actually, but my guess is that they're gonna go a little bit more subdued, I'm thinking, in the C8, but you know, all that remains to be seen. I don't know if subdued is the right word, but perhaps a little less angular, a little less perhaps overstyled than the C7. There's an artist called Chaz Cron. His work has been all over the internet on Motor One, Car and Driver. Everybody's using his artwork, and here is his latest in this really nice cherry red. Again, I really don't think that this whole rear door thing is very accurate. Not sure what's going to go on with the the tail either. So how accurate do you think these renders are compared to what we're gonna see in the real car? Let me know down below. Now listen to the shift in this Chevrolet trailer and tell me what you hear. Does that sound like a manual to you? Because to me, I heard a distinct pause in the shift. That doesn't sound like a DCT, or maybe it's a DCT that's broken. It definitely doesn't sound like an automatic. It's got a distinct shift pause. Now, Chevy could be playing with us. Maybe they're using an old clip from an older car. Definitely sounds like an LS1 type engine, something like that. I mean, it's definitely, LT1, excuse me. It's definitely sort of, based on the classic overhead valve design, single cam in the V. That's what I hear. But I think I heard a manual shift. Last year, Chevrolet released some schematics, some patents for what seems to be an electronically controlled manual transmission. So instead of a traditional clutch, where you've got the clutch pedal and a hydraulic line that goes out to a slave cylinder on the side of the transmission, which pushes the clutch fork in, they've got a patent where there's a sensor on the clutch pedal, and as you depress the pedal, the sensor actuates the slave cylinder on the side of the car. So that's a patent, and I'm wondering out loud now if this actually might make it into the Corvette. So I'm actually going to call it right now. I'm going to say that there probably is going to be a manual transmission in the C8 Corvette based just on these two things alone. However, my prediction is that it's not going to be available at launch, just like the Supra. If you remember the Porsche 911, which just recently launched back in November at the auto show in Los Angeles, is now for sale. It is the 992, which is the generation of the car. At launch, it was not available with anything other than a DCT transmission. Come this November, in a couple months, it's going to be available with a manual. So even at Porsche, which has to have a manual, they've decided to put it off for basically almost the entire year of the car. If you're into cars like the C8 Corvette, the new Camaro, any kind of car that isn't out yet, I'm covering all of these future cars. Go ahead and subscribe. I've also got a Patreon. I want to thank my Patreons who are up on screen right here. And go ahead and pick another video. My name is Eric. I will see you in the next video.